Hi, my name is Summer Hull and I write the website mommypoints.com. In addition to discussing earning and redeeming miles and points, I also like to discuss tips related to family travel. Today I'm going to talk about some tips specifically related to flying with your kids. My first tip is to look at the airline schedule and try to pick the flight that's going to keep your child on their normal schedule the longest. That's not always possible if you're flying to a destination halfway across the world. But if your flight's only 2, 3, 4 hours long, then you can probably schedule that during the day at a time that your child's normally awake. Some people like to try to schedule them either during nap times or really early or really late during the day, but that can backfire if you end up with an overtired, cranky child on the airplane. My next tip related to flying with your children is about seat assignments. If you haven't flown in a while, it may be a surprise that airlines often no longer guarantee that your entire party is going to be seated together. If you're traveling with kids, that can be a huge problem because young children definitely need a parent seated next to them. So my advice there is be extremely proactive. Don't just assume that your seats are going to be together. Check them early and often. And if you need to call the airline to ensure your seats are together, then do that. If you happen to be in a situation where the day of travel your seats aren't together, you can normally find people to be pretty accommodating to trade seats with you on the airplane, but it's much less stressful and much easier to do that ahead of time. If the flight is pretty full, you may find that sometimes airlines ask you to pay for a premium seat in order to get your family seated together. Those fees often range from anywhere from about $10 to $50 for domestic flights. Only you can decide for your family if that extra price is worth it, but I can tell you for me, we like to keep the day of travel as stress-free as possible. And if that means paying a little premium to avoid any kind of seat problems the day of the flight, then we often do decide to do that. There are some things you can do the day of travel at the airport to make your trip even more smooth. First, if you can, get someone to drop you off right at the terminal. It makes things much easier than having to hassle with parking and getting all your luggage to the terminal. Second, be ready for security. Children 12 and under can keep their shoes on, so that sounds small, but it can really make it a lot quicker process getting through security than having to get everyone's shoes back on as soon as you get through. But do be prepared to bring your liquids and other things out of the bag ahead of time so that you're not hassling at security with all your kids in your bags and taking some extra time. Once you get through security, find a good place in the gate area to kind of headquarters out of with all of your bags. But don't try to make your kids sit still right there. Let them wander around a little bit as long as they're safe, but have them burn some energy off before they get on the plane. That'll make it much easier for them to sit still once they actually have to board the aircraft. My last tip is to plan enough activities for your kids to last the entire duration of the flight, plus a little bit extra in case there's delays. The type of activities you're going to plan are going to vary depending on the age of your kids. But in general, some good ideas are things like small books, small toys, Play-Doh, little pipe cleaners with different colors on them, crayons, and even snacks can make a great form of entertainment on the airplane. Another piece of advice is to bring electronics because they can be a great way to keep your kids engaged on the plane, but don't turn them on until you're already flying at 10,000 feet. If you get an iPad out for your child when the aircraft is boarding, you're going to have to then put that away when the airline closes the boarding door, and you're not going to be able to turn it back on until the aircraft's at 10,000 feet. That can lead to some really upset, grumpy children. So save electronics for when you're already in the air and focus on some of the easier non-electronic forms of entertainment at the beginning. If you're lucky enough to have your child fall asleep on the airplane, do whatever you can to keep them in that position. Sometimes it can be tempting to shift them around so you can get up and use the restroom and do what you need to do. But I've often found that while children are sometimes asleep on airplanes, it's not the same deep sleep that they often get in their beds at home. Stay tuned for more tips on family travel, and remember to check out my site, mommypoints.com, for daily updates.